We'll do a full deep dive on Purple Daily today into the current state of the Vikings offense as we do each and every week. But wanted to pose this speculative question to you guys here because, it's kind of amazing how fast the NFL season flies by. And we're already like a quarter of the way through the NFL regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Vikings are off to a good start team-wise, 3-1 with a pretty favorable schedule. And barring some sort of collapse, it looks like as a team, they're probably going to make the playoffs. The NFC is pretty weak. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they're kind of headed for 9, 10, 11 wins, maybe flirt with the division. Things are going pretty well in KOC's first year. And the starting quarterback will enter the final year of his contract in 2023. Since he signed that deal with the Vikings back in 2018, he has yet to play the final year of any contract. He has always renegotiated with the team in some way to tack extra years onto the end of it. And so I guess with all of that in mind, if they were having a train wreck season, you'd probably say, wow, he's 34 and it's probably not going to happen. But they're having a pretty good season. He's not having a great season yet, but he's come through in the clutch in moments where they've needed him.
Yep.
What do you think? Two questions. What do you think the landscape looks like for Cousins and the Vikings after the season? And what would have to happen from now through the end of the season for them to give him yet another contract extension?
So I'll start with question 2 because, look, 4 games in, we all on this show have made it abundantly clear. We don't care about his stats. The Vikings might, we don't. Because ultimately, we have been calling on him for, the first 4 or 5 years of his time with the Vikings to win games. And the last 2 weeks, he's done that. That being said, I think it's interesting that, and you can't look past the fact that this isn't clicking yet like O'Connell expects. Now, there's still time. There's a lot of time. It could click. It could be great. But remember,
it took Brady 2.5 months in that Arian system.
He took control though. He told Bruce, we're doing what TB does this well, not what you like.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting circumstance because that was the quarterback actually saying, I am hijacking your plan and I'm going to do my thing and we're going to win a Super Bowl. And they did. O'Connell is very much going to stick to his plan. And I think part of this goes back to, just as the surface level of this conversation, part of this goes back to what we talked about from the day O'Connell got this job, which is, can Kirk Cousins be to him what Matthew Stafford was to Sean McVay and O'Connell? And I keep saying this, Kirk Cousins is not Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, and I told Dex this a couple of days ago, Phil, when you were out, Matthew Stafford operates with no conscience for the most part. He could throw a pick and he doesn't care. He's just fine. You can see to right now when Kirk throws a pick, it still affects Kirk for a certain amount of time. It's a long way of saying this. There are some definite things that I think O'Connell is going to have to see from Kirk to decide Kirk is his guy. I think O'Connell very much said, I can work with Kirk. Done it before. My system works, which is great. He's right. And I can work with Kirk, but let's see where it goes. So I think that this is very, very much right now an early snapshot. The wins have come. Kirk has succeeded late in games the last 2 weeks when he's been needed the most. But if Kirk Cousins continues to play the way that Kirk is, I think there's a very good chance they allow him to play his contract out. And this all comes back to this. And this is the question, or this is the thing that we are all afraid of, and rightfully so. Now we have to have some faith because it's new people. Can you find the replacement? Because we've always said this, Kirk Cousins is not the worst choice. We've been through in this godforsaken football town, a roller coaster ride of quarterbacks, some good, many bad. And so it's going to come down to, I think, Kevin O'Connell, when this is all said and done, is going to say, you know what, that worked great. Kirk is my guy. But if we continue to see sort of what we are seeing now, which is a guy that can win, which is a guy who's won games, that's awesome. But, it's not really clicking, I don't think, exactly as KOC wants, then I think they allow Kirk to play out the contract and the Vikings look for a new quarterback, probably a young one, for 2024.
Yeah, this is all so interesting because there's this almost like this fear among the fans and even the ownership in the organization of like, oh my God, be careful what you wish for. Yeah. You know, maybe Kirk's not Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, but you know, he is one of the 12 to some people would say like 10 to 15 best quarterbacks in the world. You don't just want to move off of that. And I say it's more complicated than that. Of course, if you just told me in a vacuum, hey, generally speaking, would you like to have one of the 10 to 15 best quarterbacks in the world on your team? I would say, yeah. My next question would be, well, how many teams are there? Oh, there's only 32. Okay, well then bragging about having the 14th best quarterback in a league of 32 teams is maybe not as much of a flex as people think it is. But my biggest question would be, how much flexibility would he be willing to give the Vikings? Because that's the thing here. A lot of these other guys, in fact, if you look at the average annual value of the contracts in the NFL, yeah, he's outside the top 10 now. Like Roger, in terms of just like, look at the total value of the contract over X amount of years. Rodgers, his average contract is $50 million a year, but there's outs there. You know, Russell Wilson's new contract is like $49 million a year. Kirk's all the way down at 35. But the reason why that doesn't matter is because with those other contracts, like Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, for instance, you can take money and move it around and, hey, we think we're going to pop this year. Let's lower your cap hit for this year, shove it into year 5. You know, you wouldn't do that specifically, but you'd shove it into future years. Mm-hmm. He gives teams, Kirk, no flexibility to lower his number enough. Like he lowered his number this year. He's still the 3rd highest cap hit. So I think what I wonder is, what am I paying for here? What am I really getting beyond 2023? If I'm going to have a guy that's going to take up the 3rd highest cap hit in the NFL, but he's nowhere near the 3rd best quarterback, let's look under the hood. What am I really getting here? Do I get mobility like a Jalen Hurts or like a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray Deshaun Watson's going to come back at some point. That guy's really mobile. I don't get mobility. Okay, do I get a guy with huge arm talent? Again, like a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, guys that can just like bail you out with a ridiculous throw on a 3rd and 12. No, I mean, Kirk has an accurate arm, but he doesn't have arm talent to, hey, it's 3rd and 9. There's a guy a rusher in your face, and you have to drop down 3 quarters and throw a bullet to a crossing route, right? You don't really get that either. Mm-hmm. Okay, what else am I paying for? Do I get great lead? Do I get the Tom Brady level leadership here? The Patrick Mahomes level, the Matthew Stafford level leadership here? Yeah, I don't get a toxic guy. Like Kyler Murray might be a toxic guy. There's some other guys in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers actually has turned into at times a little toxic, where he's just alienating teammates by not making a decision and stuff. Like, at least I get a good team player, but I don't get like a transcendent leader here. So these are all the things I'm thinking about. I'm not just going to cut bait on one of the 15 best quarterbacks in the world, but I need to know, how much am I really paying for it in a league that caps the amount of money you can spend on the roster? And what are the attributes that I need to help fill that he doesn't provide? And do I have enough flexibility to do that with, you know, bringing in an extra 2 or 3 free agents or whatever it is? So it's kind of a really complicated discussion, especially if they go to the playoffs and win 9, 10, or 11 games. You know?
Yeah, so he's under contract for next season at $36 million, which will be 16% of the Vikings cap. This is also from overthecap.com. So right now he's making 15% of the cap at 31.4. Next season at 36.2 cap hit. That's a 16% cap hit. And he has those void years, tacked on 24 and 25 at 12 and 6 million respectively. So I think Kwesi has to basically, again, kind of play this little stock market game of, are we getting the most value out of that position? And is it worth investing more and keeping the same amount of percent cap hit? Let's call that between, 14 and 16%. And we're winning 10, 11 games, but is it more worth it to develop someone, make a fraction of that cap hit, and kind of move on from it? It's such a strange game that I think Kwesi and KOC basically have to figure out over the next year.
I think that this is going to be, because the more I watch this, it starts to make some sense. I think this is going to be KOC's call, largely. He is the guy who can, I'm sure, be emboldened enough to say, I can find a guy. Like Kwesi, great, man, you do your thing. But Kevin's the guy that played the position. He's the guy that works with these guys. And ultimately, if and when they draft a quarterback to replace Kirk, KOC's job is going to be tied to that guy. Like, if it works, you're a genius. If it ponders, you might be screwed. So I think that this is going to come down to Kevin. And I also think that what we're seeing now is probably a move where the Wilf said Kirk is staying. O'Connell said, okay, cool. I've worked with Kirk. I can do that. But it also buys him time because he can then see, basically, I think what this is in some ways now, because O'Connell seems like a good guy, but he's smart. Like there's a lot churning there. This is not just some, oh man, I'm a football guy. This guy's a thinker, you can tell. And so I think what he's doing is that he's test driving Kirk. And the test drive is in progress. I don't think it's gone as well as he would hope so far, but again, you're 3-1, so to Phil's point, you're buying yourself a ton of time. But I also think that when we get to the end of 2022, Kevin's going to have for Kwesi some very serious opinions, not only of what he thinks of Kirk, but he's going to be a year in, more comfortable in this job, and therefore I think feel more confident to say, you know what? I don't think Kirk can be our quarterback past 2023, but now I can go play a major role in finding that guy. And that ultimately becomes what scares me the most. Can you find that guy? Because I was always convinced, and talked about this a ton, that Rick Spielman couldn't find that guy. Kevin O'Connell is going to be far more involved than anyone on the coaching staff has been, dating back to when I think Norv signed off on Teddy. That's the last time that I thought a coach played a big role in a quarterback choice here.
It doesn't scare me at all for two reasons. Number one, this organization has a history of generally having it's well run. It's not necessarily the best run, but it's a well run, competent organization that constantly puts out competitive rosters. You very rarely have the inverse, where it's a quarterback that's just holding everything together, like you've seen in Seattle for at a time, or Green Bay. It's felt like that at times. I think the last 3 or 4 years they have a great roster now too. But you've got, look at what you have on this current team. You've got franchise left tackle, franchise right tackle, franchise wide receiver, another really good understudy wide receiver in KJ Osborne that could easily step in and be a number 2, right? On defense, you've got some, depending on how their seasons play out. I mean, Daniil Hunter's in his prime. Cam Dantzler's a good player. I think you're a little bit more barren on defense than you are on offense. But Ezra Cleveland's under the age of 25 as your left guard. Like you've got enough here. You're not the Bears. This is what's funny about the Bears, and the Vikings are going to probably stomp them this weekend. They go and draft Justin Fields, and then everything blows up, and then they decide, well, let's just push everything out the door. Let's just continue nuking this thing and, say goodbye to Allen Robinson and Khalil Mack and everyone.
Right.
Well, now you've basically, and maybe they just didn't feel like the new regime that Justin Fields was going to be the guy going forward. They've nuked any chance of Justin Fields. Like the reason why you would draft a quarterback in that spot is so that you can build a team around him and take advantage of his rookie contract for 5 years. Yes. Well, they took another step back roster-wise, and they've essentially screwed Justin Fields. He might not be the guy, but if you eventually took a young quarterback and put him in this car, this is a much better car to drive. You've got your tackles. You got Justin Jefferson. You're going to have, I think even if Ty Chandler becomes the starting running back, you're going to have a running back that's competent. So I don't fear life after Kirk. The Vikings historically have found ways to win divisions or go to the playoffs with Tavares Jackson, with Christian Ponder, with a rookie Teddy Bridgewater or second-year Teddy Bridgewater. Like, you can make the playoffs in many different ways. And I'll give you two quick examples here, too. And this is one cautionary tale, but also one inspirational tale of teams in the NFL right now. Let's give you the inspirational tale. The Eagles decided, you know what? We whiffed on Carson Wentz. He wasn't durable. He was just kind of a weird locker room presence. And we just don't want to pay him as much money as we thought we did. So we're going to say goodbye to Carson Wentz. And we're gonna take a shot on Jalen Hurts. Second-round pick, makes no money. So we can fortify things around Jalen Hurts, and maybe we can tap into whatever upside he has. There wasn't a 100% chance that thing was going to work, but it allowed, because he made no money, it allowed you to bring in a star wide receiver over here, right? Defensive player, cornerback over there.
Right.
And so they took a leap of faith and said, we're not happy with our highly paid sort of average quarterback. Let's not be stuck on him. On the flip side, the Niners did the same thing with Trey Lance and gave up a bunch of draft capital to get Trey Lance, realized, well, I mean, the injury kind of forced their hand there. But I think even before the injury, they were like, ooh, he's not very accurate in practice.
Right.
And now they're back to Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's a cautionary tale. But I would just say, like, don't be afraid of it. Cousins isn't driving this thing right now. They're 3-1, and he's kind of along for the ride, has made some good throws in situations where they've needed it.
Yeah.
But he's kind of along for the ride the first month of the season.
I think the best thing about the Vikings' predicament with their current structure is this. For the first time, and this didn't work great, but for the first time since Childress elected to take Tavares Jackson, which didn't work out, I understand that, but you have a offensive-minded coach who can explore all of the prospects and take one who he thinks can fit his system. And that is the gamble if you painted a scenario, Phil, of like 3 or 4 potential gambles, right? Like, okay, defensive coach, and they're going to get a QB. Well, hell, we saw it didn't work. But if you're going to get Kevin O'Connell to sign off, which he undoubtedly will, on the quarterback choice that's going to succeed Kirk, that to me is the smartest thing. And then we have, until proven otherwise, no reason not to trust O'Connell there. So yeah, this is the Cousins tale in retrospect is really intriguing because of this. When Rick Spielman signed Kirk, it actually, if you go back now and think about what would appeal to Mike, it should have made sense. Kirk Cousins, risk adverse, hates to throw picks. Okay, Mike loves that. You don't want to throw picks. That's awesome. Like if you looked at Kirk on paper the day that they signed him, without at that time knowing his quirks and all that, but just at who he was as a quarterback and what his tendencies were, you would think Zim would have loved him. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this guy's going to give the ball back to us and we're going to score some points, and he's a good quarterback, but he doesn't like to throw picks, because what drove Mike crazy? Case Keenum. Not because he didn't have a great year, but because he would take risks that Mike didn't approve of. So that's why I would far rather have the coach actually signing off on the quarterback than being brought to the coach and saying, you'll love this guy. And then it goes completely off the chain and it doesn't work, which it didn't, obviously. With those two.
So we'll see.
Reckless speculation.
If he, if he explodes in the last part of the season, from this point going forward, then I think it'd just be. I think almost no matter what, I would just play out the last. Almost from an age perspective alone, like he's going to be 36 the next time. Yeah. Like his new contract would kick in, so I would play out the string regardless, and he has a full no trade clause. So if it goes sideways this year, you can't even dictate that. But it's a very interesting offseason ahead as we
that was very
get a little
reckless.
ahead of ourselves. Yeah.
That was incredibly reckless.
Reckless speculation.
Before we get into some old tweets exposed here, a shout out to our friends over at Spiral Light Candles, Judd. The victory candle has been lit 3 times already this year.
Yes, Judd's Purple Positivity candle. It is burning bright, and you know what? It's doing in times of victory. It gives you the opportunity to celebrate, and at times of stress, which there certainly has been in the past 2 games, it gives you the opportunity to breathe in the magnificent aroma, calm yourself down, become one with the game. SpiralLightCandles.com is the place to go. And also, so if you are trying to find, I don't know, a birthday gift or a gift for your girlfriend, your wife, your mom, SpiralLightCandles.com is the place to check it out. They are great gifts as well, but that Purple Positivity candle, make sure it's burning in your house and keeping you calm in moments of stress. SpiralLightCandles.com.
All right, boys. Every week, Declan goes back into the archives and finds incriminating tweets. All right, what did we tweet this time around, Declan?
This is a very quick turnaround from old tweets exposed. We just got to go back about 7, 8, 9 days or so.
Oh my God.
So let's see what happened last week when we were talking about the Gopher football team.
Here's the path to Pasadena, okay? And I don't want to hear any pushback from the damn conference.
The path to
Pasadena is this.
Which is weekly.
If you lose at Penn State, but you win the rest of your games, which, by the way, everything I'm saying is contingent on beating the Badgers and Hawkeyes, okay?
Yeah.
And Penn State, and I know they've got a gauntlet, and I really don't care. And Penn State, they beat you, but they lose their big games, which would mean more than one loss. And the Gophers and with one loss, they definitely would win the Big Ten West, then go to the Big Ten championship game, lose to the Buckeyes. Again, don't get embarrassed, but you're probably going to lose. You belong in Pasadena, not Penn State.
Pasadena, Judd?
There was a fake Judd. There was a fake Judd.
Hopefully you didn't print too many shirts there. You might have to eat
We
that
could have had a
inventory.
great weekly segment of the path to Pasadena if they had beat Purdue. That could have been a weekly staple on
We
Mac
are
and
sitting
Judd.
here, arms wide open. Listen, guys, the Twins have moved out of we have terminated the lease of the Twins. They have moved out of the Mackey and Judd apartment complex.
Oh, God.
For the foreseeable future, there is a wide open unit here. It's it's 2,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 3. We would love to have you, Gophers.
3-bedroom.
Would love to have
And
you.
people were coming in.
Yeah,
Business was picking up. That's the other sad thing. Yeah. You, the viewers, you were loving it. The listeners.
We wanted to wrap our arms around you so bad. And now I feel like the Gophers almost have to beat Illinois and Penn State back to back for me to feel like, okay, we can let's jump back in.
The path to the Bronx. The Pinstripe Bowl.
The Pinstripe Bowl.
The Pinstripe Bowl. Path to the Bronx. Yes.
Well, path to the Pinstripe Bowl would be the alliteration.
I just wanted to say the Bronx. Yankee Stadium.
All right,
All right,
shouldn't talk
let's
too much.
see what Macadac had to say.
I have several hot takes about this year's Gophers
Oh.
team. My first one is, I don't know how the record will finish up, but this is a better team than the 2019 team that started 9-0, finished 11-2, and beat Auburn on a New Year's Day Bowl game.
Agree with that completely. And go back to the 3 non-conference games, which 2 you won by the hair of your chin. You kicked 3 teams' asses. That's different than escaping.
I feel like
no comment.
because Judd jumped in there and doubled down
It's
on
true.
my
It's
opinion.
actually a slam of Judd, too.
Judd
it's worse on
is
me.
the leader in the clubhouse right now.
Phil embarrassed himself, and then I, for the second time, embarrassed myself. So
You were
I do
just like,
lead.
I couldn't agree.
I
Never
couldn't-
agreed more.
Such
with
a
anything you've
great
ever
point
said.
by Phil Mackey. What an idiot! Not you. Me.
I don't know what Dex has in store here, but there's
actually,
almost nothing
I'm
he
the
can
safest.
say.
Yeah, I'm the safest by far.
Yeah, you're like go St. Cloud State.
Yeah, go ahead. Parlay for the Gophers as well. This is a touchdown. Gophers win. Tanner Morgan goes for 250 yards and accounts for 3 touchdowns.
Okay, so 250 or more, I'm guessing.
Yep. Yeah.
And
at
and that
least.
is all-purpose yards or passing yards?
Passing. I'm going to go with passing. But he
Okay.
accounts for 3 touchdowns, and one of those could be a rushing or whatever. Maybe he receives one. But yeah, 250 passing yards, 3 touchdowns for Tanner Morgan, and a Gophers win.
Okay.
I got the yards correct, and I got the 3 correct. It was just 3 interceptions for Tanner Morgan, not 3 touchdowns and a Gophers loss. So
Why are you throwing 3 interceptions? And Purdue's not terrible, but
I'm just saying, I had the wrong 3. If I would have said 3 picks and a Gophers loss, I'm just making light of my prediction.
guy.
I melted down. I'm done with them.
Regression to the mean. All right, so I think the new slogan is check back in with us after the Penn State game. If the Gophers win their next 2 games, I'm back in. They'll be a top 20 team in that case. I'll be back in.
They've lost my faith. Divorce papers have been filed. I don't trust them.
Irreconcilable
Nope.
differences.
Yep. Thank you.
With the 2022 Gophers.
Yep.
And there you have it. Those are your old tweets exposed here on Mackey and Judd. Over on Purple Daily today, the state of the offense deep dive and a random Viking of the week. We'll see if Judd can carry the momentum of his dramatic victory from last week. Greg Camarillo, man.
Yes. He loves us.
All right, Mackey and Judd. See you guys.